I want to show you something kind of creepy. How's that for starting a nugget? So last nugget we kind of went through the base configuration of our switch, right? I'm back on the console port now. We set it up with a management IP address. All right, that's it. I'm changing the password. I can't talk and type CBT nuggets at the same time. I'm going in. Enable secret Cisco. There we go. Something I can brainlessly type. Oh, there's a fun message. I'm like, I want to show you something. Now I'm on something totally different than what I planned to show you. It says, the enable secret you've chosen is the same as your enable password. This is not recommended. Please re-enter the enable secret. Remember we talked about in the last nugget, actually 2 nuggets ago, a difference between enable password and enable secret. Now when I said enable secret is Cisco, what the Cisco device is saying is, well, that's the same thing as your clear text version, or the Cracker Jacks encrypted version right here. They're like, that's not recommended. Now let me ask you this: in that message anywhere, does it say I didn't take that? No, it didn't. It actually will take it just fine. The enable secret is indeed Cisco. Cisco just wants to try and sway you as much as they possibly can not to do that, or at least to go in here and do a no enable password, which I think I did in the last couple nuggets, but I obviously didn't save my configuration, so I'll do that now. So anyway, back to what I wanted to show you. We assigned an IP address to this switch right here. So that I can manage it remotely. And then, as kind of the culmination of that configuration piece, I said, well, let's do this. I've got my computer. Let me grab my pen. I've got my computer plugged into that switch at 10.1.1. I think I gave it 100. And here's the switch. It is assigned 10.1.1.10. And that's, by the way, the only thing this IP address is used for is management purposes. So I was like, hey, well, let's tell that in. Well, this is what I want to show you. Remember early on in the series, I opened our good friend Wireshark. And I know early on you're probably like, okay, that was intense. Wireshark is intense for most people that are just getting started in the Cisco world. So I'm going to get you familiar with it, because it is a huge troubleshooting tool to where you can see information at every layer of the OSI model. And here's what I want to show you. I'm going to open a capture right here, and I've the network adapter that I have connected to the switch is actually this little USB 2.0 fast Ethernet adapter. Now you can see there's not much going on my network. I got some stuff, maybe some, I don't know, something going on there, but not much going on because I'm not really doing anything. So I will say this is the one I want to capture. Let's do a start. So Wireshark is now monitoring that port. It's seeing some, occasional spanning tree messages, which we're going to discuss that a little bit later. But I'm going to open up a telnet session. Oh, wait a sec. Not like that. I'm going to do there we go. Telnet 10.1.1.10 behind the scenes, and I should see. There we go. I've got to change that logon message. Behind the scenes, notice Wireshark is like, ooh, I see telnet data. Telnet data. Now down here, it's like, okay, that's all just kind of gobbledygook. So we'll just kind of ignore that for now. So I'm going to log in. I'm going to say, okay, my password is Cisco, because that's my telnet password. Again, behind the scenes, Wireshark is like, munching telnet data. I'm going to go, okay, well, let's get into privilege mode. Cisco. Type that in and hit the enter key, and okay, I think that's enough. Let's go ahead and stop that capture. Now, in here, Wireshark is like, okay, I've captured all this data. Now, if I really want to say, well, what was that data that you captured? Now, this is layer 2 of the OSI model. It's saying, okay, well, it was from this source MAC address, my little Apple USB adapter, going to this destination MAC address. I'm using these IP addresses. You can see the source IP, and there's a lot more stuff in the header than source and destination IP, but source is 10.1.1.100, destination. I mean, so all of that, we saw this previously. I can go through every layer, but really at the application layer of the OSI model, it's saying I captured SK, and then I captured O. Oh, wait a sec. That sounds a little familiar. I captured I. Let's see, where did that come in? I captured /r. Oh, what is this? Well, there's a little feature in Wireshark where you can actually analyze and follow the TCP stream. What that does is it tells Wireshark, you know what? This is one stream. I've highlighted one stream of data right here. How about can you just kind of follow that and put that all back together? Panic, heart attack, what? Huh? what's the deal here? And everything that I just typed in, I telnetted the switch, and immediately it's like, oh, I saw a logon banner come across, user identification, password, and all of a sudden it's in red, Cisco. And then all of a sudden I see this enable. It's kind of like, okay, what's this? And then it's in red, Cisco. Now, what's the colors represent? Can anyone figure that out just by looking at it? What's the colors represent? It's the send and receive. So essentially the blue is what my computer has received from the other side. The red is what I've sent to the other side. Now you saw it when I telnetted into the switch, I couldn't actually see the password. And that's because the device did not echo it back to me. Everything that you type in Telnet is actually echoed back. You see, I typed in enable, which my computer actually sent. You can see the red, well, I can't, it's hard to highlight, just you get it. You see the red, right? That's what I sent, and the switch actually echoed that back to me. It's like, okay, you sent an E, let me echo it back, and that's how my terminal displays it. And that's really the only difference, is when I typed in the passwords, the switch turned off the echo back. So it's saying, okay, you've sent it to me, but I'm not echoing it back. But does anyone see a problem with this picture? I mean, all of my what I thought was a secure password is now exposed. And if somebody in your environment knows what they're doing with Wireshark, it's going to expose the passwords that you're typing as you're logging into the switch. So I do this little let me show you demonstration to demonstrate that Telnet, not a good protocol. Good, it's functional, but not a secure protocol, because if anybody has eyes to see that communication that's going between you and the device, they will be able to decrypt, it's not even encrypted. They'll be able to see everything that you're typing because Telnet is in clear text. Now, I don't even know if I should say this, but I want to, because I want to tell you the truth. So let's say you are sitting at your desk and you Telnet to your device. Does that mean you're totally doomed? Like somebody just grabbed your password and they are now going to hack your network. Or worse yet, let's say you're sitting on that beach in Hawaii or at home and you Telnet across the internet to a firewall that you have over here. And so you're actually Telnetting, you're sending all of that in clear text over the internet. Does that mean that the evil beings out on the internet immediately see that communication and will now hack your firewall because they have all the passwords necessary? Chances are good that won't happen. First off, I don't want to give you a false sense of confidence, because it is still true, still valid that Telnet's not good to use. But first off, in your environment, one of the things that switches do, and let me bring up my drawing a little bit more. One of the things that switches do is where did my brain just checked out? Okay, switches separate into separate collision domains. So let's say that your router is right here and your computer is plugged in right here. And I Telnet from here to here. Well, that communication only goes between your computer and that router. It's not like a hub. In the hub days, I would say there's much more of a chance of you being doomed, because anybody, if this were a hub, anybody could open Wireshark that wanted to and see all communication on the network. But if I'm directly Telnetting from my device to that router or that firewall, well, it's only coming in my port and coming out this port. So if somebody over here, here's evil person X that has opened Wireshark and they're sniffing packets, they actually won't see my communication unless they start sabotaging your switch. There's a little program that anybody can download. It's free, called Cain and Abel. It is like a Swiss Army knife of hacking tools that are kind of like point and click. Like you click a few buttons and you unleash a hacking attack. One of the things that they can do is unleash what's called a CAM table overflow. See, CAM stands for Content Accessible Memory, right? It's where your switch stores all the MAC addresses that it knows about. So if they do this successfully, what will happen is their computer will send thousands and thousands and thousands of packets into the switch sourced from different MAC addresses. So the switch is like, okay, I've learned about this and this and this and this and this and this. And their goal by doing that is to fill up the CAM table to where there's so many MAC addresses stored in there, the switch is like, I'm out of memory. I can't store anymore. And what the switch does at that point is turn itself into a hub. It's like, well, if I can't store anything, if my cam table is full, then I'm just going to forward everything everywhere because I don't want communication not to be received. So as soon as that happens, now this evil person can capture your telnet session. But my point is that it's going to take a little bit of work for them to do that. Okay, so it's not as easy. Like obviously, it's easy for me because I'm actually on the computer that's doing the telnetting. And if I'm on that computer, then for sure I can capture that. Or if somehow this computer is compromised, as in there's a worm or some creepy thing that's installed on it, a keystroke logger. I mean, there's all kinds of way to hack a computer, but it's not just as easy as opening Wireshark anywhere in the network and capturing passwords. And the same thing on the internet. If I telnet across the internet, that's really not a good practice. But does that mean we are destroyed immediately? Well, I would say no, simply because there is so much data going around the internet that you are almost secure in obfuscation to where it's just like by the sheer quantity, terabytes and terabytes of data every minute are being transferred all around the internet. Who's to say that somebody's going to grab your telnet session in there? And it would also mean that someone in the middle of your communication is going to be doing the grabbing, as in you maybe came in through Cox or Quest, or some kind of service provider that's giving you your internet connection. So there would be an evil person sitting there that could capture it, or they pass it to, Level 3 or Time Warner, these big service providers, and so there's somebody evil there. So for those things to happen, for somebody to capture your telnet session, there would have to be a shady person existing at one of the service providers that you're going through, and they would have to find your conversation among the trillions of conversations that are happening across the internet. So what I'm saying is there's different levels of paranoia, right? There's some people that are like, I type my credit card into a website and it's gone. I know somebody's going to sell that and steal it, and I'm defrauded. I mean, there's people that are like, Agent Scully is standing outside my door waiting for me to use my computer because then they will know everything that I'm trying to do. So there's different levels, and then there's people that that are kind of like, hey, you know what? The world is a happy place. There are no hackers. It's all, they're totally different levels of paranoia. The best thing to be, I would say it's probably better to be over paranoid than less, because it's less chance of something bad happening. But just to put it into a reality, the world isn't waiting to hack your telnet session. There are certain people that wish they could, but it's going to be very difficult for them to get that. All of that is a precursor to managing your Cisco the right way using SSH. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, that was kind of a long precursor, right? Well, yeah, but there was so much meat in there. You now have seen how to use Wireshark to follow a TCP stream and reassemble data. You can do that with anything. Outlook emails, Excel spreadsheets, anything that are being sent at the time, you can capture and reassemble and put it back together. We saw how clear text Telnet was by design. That's just how the protocol was written. But at the same time, how using it doesn't mean that Big Brother suddenly comes down and says, I have the keys to your network. As point number 4, why risk it? I mean, what's the chance that somebody's going to grab your data and hack you? 1 in 10, 1 in 100, 1 in a million? It depends on where you are in the world and what kind of malicious person would want your data. But the point is, why take that chance? Why add that to one more thing that you have to worry about? Instead, go with Cisco's recommendation. Use Secure Shell, or SSH, to manage your network. Now, before I show you how to set it up, I want to show you how it works. Because when you understand this, you understand how almost all major security algorithms work across the public internet. You'll be able to explain how VPNs work, how secure web surfing works, because they all use the same method as SSH. Essentially, you have a client that wants to have some kind of secure session with a server, or a router or a switch or whatever you want to do over some untrusted network. And just about any network, unless I can own every single piece of cable in there and know exactly what's on it, is an untrusted medium. So let's just say we've got the internet. I'm going to show you how it works for secure web surfing, and then I'll apply it to SSH. Let's say we go to https bank.com, whatever online bank we decide to use. Now, the big question is, how do I know that this is secure? I mean, HTTPS, by the way, uses SSL. secure socket layer, or it's the same concept as SSH. How do I know that this is secure? I mean, if you think about it, in order for security to happen, the server or the client has to send an encryption key, which is essentially a mathematical formula that says, here's how I'm going to encrypt my data. It's kind of like a secret key that only those two can have. Well, the problem is if there's eyes on this network, if this is an untrusted network, then that's a problem. Because if I send the key, then anybody can grab the key and we're doomed. Well, that's the same problem that a fellow named Martin Hellman and Whitfield Diffie faced decades and decades ago, is how do you have security over a public network when you can't send security keys in clear text that anybody can grab? And they came up with a method of public key cryptography. So here's how it works. Essentially, the bank will have what's called a certificate. And that certificate will have an encryption algorithm on it. It's known as the public key. Now, the public key is half of an encryption formula. So essentially, anything that is encrypted with the public key can only be decrypted by something called the private key, which is kept on the server, never, ever, ever given out to anybody. Because if I give out that private key to anybody, then this whole algorithm fails, because now anything can be decrypted. Now, have you ever gone to a website and it comes up and you get that message in Internet Explorer or Chrome or Firefox or whatever, and it comes up and says, warning, this website is not trustable. You know, this website has a certificate that is not trustworthy. Well, and most of us, if you're like me, are like, yeah, whatever. You know, continue. I want to get to the website. Well, that message it gives you a warning, because what it's saying is this server may have just made up their own certificate. As in, nobody has gone out and really said that this website is secure and this website is who they say they are. That's why we have this concept of certificate authorities. Places like VeriSign and all of that kind of stuff. I'll just throw VeriSign out there as one of them. So if I was a real company, I would take and apply for a real certificate from VeriSign. VeriSign would say, okay, let me verify that you are who you are. What's your federal tax ID number? They would make sure that you are the real deal, and then they would issue a certificate and an encryption, or essentially public-private key set, that is trusted by all the browsers of the world. So Chrome, Internet Explorer, they've all agreed that they will trust VeriSign as a authority to give out these certificates and approve the servers on the internet to really be a valid server. Now is that foolproof? No, it's not. But it's definitely a good layer on top of it to make sure that we don't have these false identities out there. Now, so this guy gets a certificate, whether it was they made it up themselves or CI gave it, and this certificate has half of an encryption algorithm on it. So the very first time when you go to bank.com, they will send over this public key, half of an encryption algorithm. And your browser, your Internet Explorer, your Chrome, your whatever you're using will say, great, I am now going to generate what is called a session key. Now, that session key is only good for this one-time use only. Session key is once I'm done talking to this website, I'm going to flush it. It is an encryption algorithm. It is called a single key, or I guess the technical word that you would use for it is a symmetrical encryption algorithm. One key to rule them all. One key to encrypt, one key to decrypt. It's fast, it's efficient, it's what we want to use because we want to have our communication go as fast as possible, but also one key. So I can't just send that one key to the server across the internet because someone would get my one key and be able to decrypt it. So you see where this is going? So I send half of an encryption formula to the client. That's this piece right here. And this is also, by the way, called asymmetric encryption. Multiple keys, or two keys to be specific, to rule them all. But very processor heavy to handle this kind of encryption. So he sends me half of an encryption algorithm. This guy says, I'm going to take that public key and encrypt my session key. Gone. It is now scrambled, it's encrypted, and the only one that can decrypt it is bank.com, because they're the only one that has this private key behind the scenes. So now, obviously, I knew what it was before I encrypted it, right? So I now send an encrypted encryption key. Think that one through, right? An encrypted encryption key over to bank.com, who now decrypts it using their private key. And now, ta-da, it's going to be a new color. Oh, we have the session key successfully transmitted and used on both sides for that session. A fresh encryption algorithm used for that session. Once that session is done, I tear it down and the session key is destroyed, never to be used again. Now, that is how public key encryption works, which is really amazing. It's really powerful to have that kind of algorithm on the internet as you surf the websites. It's the same thing that's used for SSH. It's the same thing when I have a VPN tunnel, like I want to connect to my private network using a tunnel over there. They all use this same kind of algorithm, this public key. Now I know some of you are watching this whole thing and be like, okay, come on. If somebody gets the public key, which is half of an encryption formula, can't they figure out the private key? I mean, I grew up. I went into some heavy math. X plus 1 equals 3. If I get half that formula and I'm like, okay, I don't have a piece of it. Can't I you see what I mean? Can't I be like, well, okay, X is really 2 because I can kind of reverse engineer this? No. Well, theoretically, no. But that theory has been proved for decades and decades. Now, I will tell you, if somebody came... By the way, this is called Diffie-Hellman encryption. Because those two guys, well, actually, there's 3 guys, but he got cut out of the loop. No royalties for him. But they are the ones who pioneered this public key encryption algorithm. Now, since then, it's been translated into many different forms. You'll hear things like RSA. There's all kinds of different methods of doing public key cryptography, but the concept is all the same. Now, if somebody ever came out and said, hey, I've figured out how to reverse this. I've figured out how... If I get a public key on the internet, how to generate the private key from it, you would see worldwide chaos and panic and freaking out because people would suddenly realize that the underpinning security of everything is now gone. Can it be done? I don't know. Maybe. I can't do it. No one's been able to do it so far. The government, well, as far as we know, Agent Scully can do it, but the government can't do it. So far it's been proved true, but it's a theory. The theory is nobody can figure out how to generate the private key if you have a public key. But all that being said, I dive into my conspiracy theory side of things. Now, let's talk about how to set up SSH. Let me clear all of this stuff off. So that's the how it works. So instead of having computer A and website B, we have computer A going to switch A or router A or whatever kind of device. It's all the same concept. It's just using different devices. So the way to configure SSH on a Cisco device is as follows. First off, we have to have a host name, and the reason why is this switch or this router is going to generate its own certificate. Now, it's okay. We don't need a certificate authority because we pay for those. And as long as we trust our own devices, we're not going to have a rogue device come into the play. It's okay to generate our own little public key certificate, which says who we are. But we have to have on that certificate the name of our device, as well as the domain name, like jeremy.com or cbtnuggets.com. That's a domain name. Those are 2 requirements for the certificate. So not only on that certificate is the key, but also your name. Who are you? Host name. Also on there is your domain name. Also on there is the certificate authority that approved the certificate. Think of this as like the stamp of approval. Now, in this case, this is called a self-generated certificate that we're creating. So when it says, well, who approved me? I approved me. And who are you to tell me I can't do that? That's what the device is saying. Is I am my own certificate authority, but that means the very first time you connect to this device, you're going to get a warning saying, hey, I'll show you that warning. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Now, I've already configured the host name for this device. It's CBT switch. Now I need to configure a domain name. Global config mode. And the command is IP domain name followed by what we want the domain name. Hang on, I'm having a Domain, yeah, sorry, it's IP domain name. That's what it is. IP domain name, or it looks like we can do a space. Either one of those. Sometimes Cisco is inconsistent. You'll have two ways of doing the same thing. So IP domain name, we've got cbt switch dot. Let's do nuggetlab.com. Will be our domain name that we're going to use. Okay, now we're going to generate encryption keys. We're going to say, I need to generate essentially the public-private key set for this certificate. The private key I will never give out. The public key anybody can have because it's only half of the formula. So the way I do that is I do crypto key generate RSA. RSA, by the way, is the encryption algorithm of choice on Cisco devices. I think it stands for Revere, Shamir, and Adelman. Or it's three guys that developed. It's, think of it as Diffie-Hellman, but just the next flavor, a little more efficient than Diffie-Hellman's original algorithm. So now we come to the big question: what is the size of the modulus? What is the how strong do you want this key to be? Now let me give you just a flyby view. Symmetric keys. That we use normally for, remember I said this is the session key that our computer generates to communicate with that website. Symmetric keys, common strengths are, on the low end 64-bit. Normally nowadays is 128-bit. Or if you're beefy nowadays, you'll use 256-bit. Encryption for your symmetric keys. And that's just how strong the key is. How complex is that mathematical formula in a nutshell. That's really what it means. So those are common methods to communicate. Now look at this. This is coming off and starting off with a modulus of 512 bits. These are much stronger than our normal day-to-day communications. It's much more complex because the device knows it's not going to use them for long. The only thing it's going to use these for is to encrypt that session key for the communication. So they're like, we can take the processor hit just to do a tiny amount of encryption. If we were to actually use these keys for all communication, our devices would die. There's no way they can keep up, because with the strength of keys, every bit that you add to it effectively doubles the strength. It's not like 128-bit is twice as strong as 64-bit. No, it's 65-bit is twice as strong as 64-bit. 66-bit is 4 times as strong as 64-bit, but also 4 times as complex to process. So you see what I mean? So when you're talking 128-bit versus 64-bit, it's like you can't even compare that. It's out of the park. And same thing when you come down here. You're infinitely stronger. So as our processors get bigger and bigger and bigger, we're able to create these more improved algorithms, because as the processor gets bigger and bigger, it's easier to brute force attack these 64-bit keys. We can generate millions of passwords every second and try it and see if that's the secret key that's being used. So that's that. When we come to this question, the modulus, what do you want to use? Common strength is 1024-bit. Now 512 is considered, I would say, weak for an asymmetric key set. 1024, or if you're feeling really beefy, I can go with a 2048-bit. Go to the maximum that at least this device supports. Some devices will support more. But it's actually generating. It's going to take a little bit because my little processor is going trying to generate this super strong encryption key that is going to be used for communication from here on out. Just so you know, I paused the nugget. I'm still waiting. This was 30 seconds ago. Okay, I'm pausing again. Okay, about 15 seconds later. So it took about, I would say, a total of 60 seconds to generate those keys, just because they're so beefy. So now I've got the encryption keys. I've generated this certificate. I've generated the public key. I've generated the private key. Now we need to enable it. So I'm gonna go on my device and do IP SSH. We're going to say version 2. Version 1 is old, and I would say nowadays considered bad form. It's not like somebody can hack it. It's just they've come out with improvements since then. So version 2 is the one that we want to use. Think of that as like a light switch behind the scenes. I just turned on SSH version 2. Now we create our local user accounts. What's this? Well, SSH, unlike Telnet, relies on a username and a password. Now, you remember so far when we've been managing our device, I telnet in. I hit telnet. It just says, what's your password? I type in Cisco, and I'm in. I'm able to access the device. Well, SSH requires a username and a password, or at least in the Cisco world does. So what I need to do is, in global configuration mode, create a user account that I can use for SSH. So what I'll do is I'll type in username and whatever username I want to use. Now, bad usernames are things like admin, root, administrator, because if you're a hacker, those are always the accounts you're going to try first. You're going to say, I'm going to brute force something, name that. I mean, try and come up with something unique. It doesn't have to be your name. It could be, company admin, or it may be the name of your company, ADM, or just something that wouldn't be so normal for people to use as the administrator. Jeremy would definitely classify as a non-normal administrator username. Or maybe, if I want to be even more secure, I could do Jeremy $. There's nothing to keep you from doing that. So I'll do Jeremy, host name Jeremy, and then from there I can type in either password to specify the password or secret to specify the secret. Now, just like the enable password or enable secret, it's much better if your device supports it to use the secret, because now the username and password will not be stored as clear text in the running config. So I'll say username Jeremy, secret Cisco, just so I don't forget the password. So now I've got this user account created, and if I do a show running config, by the way, this do command, again, we saw this in the last nugget, allows you to execute a show command from any mode. The only drawback of it is the question mark doesn't work. So if I'm testing, it's like I don't know. So the context sensitive help doesn't work. It just says line, as well as the tab key. So I can do show run. It's going to say I'm not completing it because I don't know what command you're trying to type. This is kind of a shortcut, if you will. So do show run. I hit the spacebar, or right there, I see username Jeremy, secret, blah, 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 blah. So just like my enable secret, it's this nice gobbledygook that is encrypted there, or hashed up on the screen. So now I've created the local user accounts. Now I need to choose to allow telnet, and I should put or SSH. Now, from the last nugget, what ports are telnet ports? As in, where do I go to configure a telnet password? You remember? Line, VTY, and then whatever line numbers I want to configure. Well, in my case, I want to configure all of them. All of them will support this. Now, there is a command under here. Now notice we've got under this VTY line, we have a password. We did that in the last nugget. That's what allowed me to telnet in right here. Is I typed in the password of Cisco. On the device. So there is a password under there, but I'm going to change the story a little bit by typing in the command transport input, as in the kinds of protocols that are allowed in, the transports, the ways that you can communicate with these VTY lines are going to be, and now I can specify, SSH or telnet. You can say none, and that totally disables all remote access. Don't want to do that. All would do both of them. Or you could type in, for instance, if I wanted to still allow both telnet and SSH, I could type in telnet and SSH. And that says I will allow both of them. So watch this. I'll go back here to my command prompt. Let's scoot this up over here. Hit the up arrow, and I see I can still telnet into the device, right? Now, if I go here and I do transport input, and I just do SSH, now I've disabled telnet, and I come back here and I hit the up arrow. It's like, I'm sorry, no soup for you. I cannot connect to the host on port 23. Connection failed because I'm no longer allowing the telnet protocol. Now, let me get back to when I first said this. I said, why do you take the risk of using telnet? Why do that? And I said, if SSH is just as easy to use, and I said asterisk, quotes, all that kind of stuff, just as easy is not the case, and that's probably why telnet is still around, is Microsoft never included a command line SSH client. Shame on you, Microsoft, for not doing that. They've always allowed telnet. Unix, Linux, they've always supported SSH from a command line, but not Microsoft. So in order to use SSH, we have to download a different program, like PuTTY, like TerraTerm, like, does this support it? TCP? No. So TerraTerm by itself does not support SSH. It does telnet only. However, you can download a SSH version of TerraTerm. So let's actually go with PuTTY. That one's nice and easy. TerraTerm I have to install. Now watch this. I'm gonna do PuTTY just on Google. Here's my download page. Notice right here, legal warning. There are countries out there that don't allow you to encrypt your data beyond a certain level. Essentially, there's government entities out there that say, we want to be able to know what you're doing. Now, the United States is not one of those. Canada is not one of those. Mexico is not one. I mean, but I would definitely make sure that you know before you do this what your country supports, because a lot of these countries will monitor and they'll see what algorithms you're using for encryption. And if it's something that is beyond what they can decrypt, you're going to get a knock on the door. Or I'm in the United States. I don't know what other countries do. I don't know if doors are being kicked down, explosions. I don't know. It's a weird world out there. So the point is, be careful with what kind of encryption you use in your country. Here we can use whatever we want. I'm going to go download PuTTY, which this is, just actually looks like I've downloaded it before because it's saying I'm downloading PuTTY 1. So I open PuTTY, and it says, okay, what do you want to do? And you've got telnet, rlogin, SSH, serial port. So I'm going to SSH, and I'm going to type in 10.1.1.10, which is the IP address of my switch. Click on open. Now check this out. It says, this server's host key is not cached in the registry. You have no guarantee that this server is the computer you think it is. What's that mean? That kind of creeps me out. What it means is PuTTY just recognized this switch is using a certificate. It's using encryption keys that it just made up itself. So it's saying, you know what, this is your first time connecting here. It's saying that I approved my own certificate. You have no guarantee that this server really is the device that you think it is. If you're okay with that, go ahead and hit yes. Now, I will say almost always we're okay with that. We, in our organizations will typically generate our own server certificates. Now, PuTTY memorizes that certificate. It says, okay, then from here on out, this device, this MAC address, this IP address, this, everything is now bound to that key, and it's not going to ask you that again. It said, you said I trust it, and the only way it'll flag that message again if maybe another device gives you that same certificate. Some other device out there says, oh, I've got the same encryption keys as the other guy. It's going to be like, whoa, sabotage. So now it's asking me, who do you want to log in as? Jeremy. This is the user account that I created. What is Jeremy's password? Cisco. Not what I expected. It was Cisco, right? Cisco. Okay, troubleshooting. Actually, I think I know what it is. There's a command I forgot to show you. Let's do a show run, and I'm going to begin with, sorry, you timed out. So let's begin with line. So we'll just zoom into those VTY lines. Yeah, there's the problem. So one more command under those VTY lines. Let's go into global config mode. I'm going to do line VTY 0-15. Get back under there. See right here that it says login. All right. Login, I know it seems like, okay, well, that's simple enough, right? Isn't that all there is to it? Login says, okay, log people into these ports, but use the password that's under here. Now, that's a problem because we are trying to use username and password, and under the ports, there's only a password. So essentially, login is useful for telnet to say, telnet in, and you can use this password. They link together. But, and this sounds a little funny to do this, but instead, we actually go to the VTY lines and type in login local. What that says to the device is use the local user database for your logins. Don't just try and log in people and only require the password, because frankly SSH doesn't even support that. It needs a username and a password. Instead, log in using the local database on here. Now this is as an alternative to log in using the TACACS server. Now what's up with that? So when we get big enough, we can set up our switches to where, I don't want the user accounts on these switches because I have hundreds of them and routers and all this kind of stuff. And I don't want to have usernames and passwords that I change on a regular basis, where I telnet into or SSH into 50 or 100 different devices on a monthly basis and change everybody's password because that's a good security practice. Instead, what you can use is something called a TACACS server. Cisco makes them, and all the devices say, "Well, I'll get my user accounts from TACACS." So when I say on the port login space TACACS, it says when somebody tries to log into these VTY lines, check their credentials against the TACACS server, and that's where you create your user accounts. So then I change my password in one place, and all the devices say, "Oh, looks like there's a password change," because they all just report to that centralized server. So that's the piece. So we can either log in using TACACS, which is a server, log in using local, which is the local user database on that device. That's going to be what we do here. Or we can just type in login, which says use the password. So I'll type it again just for grins. Login local. And now I'll go back to PuTTY, giving me my error. Let's go to restart session. There we go. Login as Jeremy. And this time password of Cisco. There we go. That's what I want to see. So it was the login local. Man, I can't believe I forgot that. So create the user. So choose to allow telnet and SSH. That was the transport input. And then also 7, enable local login. I guess I could just group that under that one statement. So transport input telnet/SSH if we want to do that, and then enable the local login so that it uses the local user database. All right, so there is SSH in all its glory. And I know some of you are like, wait, summary, there's 2 more bullets on there. Well, yes, but those are really focused on what we did while we enabled SSH. Even though the goal of this was to enable SSH, we also learned how to manage existing user accounts or manage user accounts on Cisco devices. That was what we did when I went to global configuration mode and created a username, Jeremy, password or secret Cisco to create user accounts. So you can do that not only for SSH but also for all kinds of other stuff. As a matter of fact, let me show this to you. I know we disabled telnet by using transport input SSH, but if I do transport input telnet and SSH now, watch what happens. I open my command prompt and type in telnet 10.1.1.10, and notice now telnet even is prompting me for a username, Jeremy, and a password of Cisco. It's just not secure to do it that way because that's all transmitted in clear text. So this login local and these user accounts that we create impact both SSH and telnet when we do it, but also as you go down the road when you set up VPN connections, if you want to use web management, there's all kinds of things these user accounts are used for. You now know how to create them on Cisco devices. And then finally, encrypting passwords through using secret. So we create our user accounts using username, Jer secret Cisco instead of username Jer password Cisco, because password stores it in clear text. Whoops. So password stores it in clear text, which is not secure. You can encrypt it using that service password encryption we saw in the last nugget, which uses that crackerjacks encryption, but nothing beats that secret encryption level. All right, good. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.